I was grounded all the time as a teenager, so all I did was listen to the radio because it's all I could do. I would just sit in my room and listen to music and become obsessed with the radio personalities, Jonathan Brandmeier, and, and I loved it. And I was like, oh, I want to be like radio famous, But then when I looked into it as a career, I was like, wow, that pays nothing. So
right. Yes.
Everyone, and welcome to Life with a Cheri on Top. I'm your host, Cheri Hagan, and today I am joined by Richard Clark. He is the founder of Area Code Audio and has helped me tremendously with podcasts so far. So welcome, Richard.
Hey, Cheri. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining me, really. I wanted to talk a little bit about your company and kind of what led you to becoming a small business owner, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting question. Because a lot of times people are like, why did you start a podcast agency? Which is a different answer than why become a small business owner. And I think the way I would frame that is like, and I feel like you can relate to this. Like, I have worked for a number of different organizations over my lifetime.
Yes.
And I've found that in my career, I keep making these long plays toward like autonomy. Like, I just want more autonomy. And over time, I just found that it did not matter what it was. The more autonomy I had, the happier I was. Like, mental health wise, it just made me feel better,
Yes.
And so,
totally agree.
And so I just kept like over and over, like even in the last thing I was doing before I started my small business was basically like, can I just do my own thing in this business? And they were kind enough to say yes. And then when I had the opportunity to sort of go off on my own, I took that opportunity because I knew from experience that was only going to help. It's scary. It's risky, but it is, it's definitely worth it. And so, I started small business essentially because it's something that allows me to do what I want and hold my own fate in my own hands. I felt in the last year or so, like it feels like one of the lessons we're learning this year is like stability is not a corporate job. You work for a corporate job. The next day you could just be gone. That's
so you feel more stable as your own business owner?
I do. Yes, I think so. I mean, it depends on the season, right? Like if I'm making enough to live on, I definitely feel like 100% feel more stable. And the thing is, if I don't, I know that's happening and I know why it's happening and I know what I can do to solve for it.
Interesting.
And I know when it's coming so I can prepare for it as opposed to other scenarios. That's if you're purely looking at it through the sort of the financial stability lens too.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what either sparks somebody to do it or makes them not do it is financial stability. Because speaking from a real estate perspective, I always wanted to be a realtor, but never did it until I was married to Kevin, and he could carry us whether I was working or not, right? Because you never know how that's really going to work. And I mean, now I'm working on year 12 now, I think. So it is very seasonal. This is my downtime. And that's why I started the podcast, actually, because I'm not good at sitting around doing nothing. So so I was like, hey, I always wanted to do this, so let's do it,
As someone who's been in this for exactly 2 seasons, so like fall and winter.
Yes.
I am very much relating already to what you're saying, right? Like the seasons are the worst thing about doing this, about working for yourself, because you really are sitting on your hands a lot of times, like just waiting for the month to end, which is something out of your control. And we got kind of lucky because, it was sort of a do or die situation for me in starting the business. And so, I was the primary breadwinner. Jennifer was doing freelance and was contributing quite a lot, but she was not, making a regular salary. And so
Right.
then we lost all regular salaries for a time being. And then at some point, just a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, Jennifer got a full-time job, which now I'm in your position where I like have that foundation, and it is a lot more chill and nice now, knowing that you're going to have that other salary coming in. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks to both of our spouses for that, because it really does make a huge difference. Yeah. So congrats to Jen. Tell her congratulations.
Yes, absolutely. For sure.
So what made you decide to do podcasting in the first place?
I've been doing podcasting in some way, like literally making podcasts since basically they came out 2008 or so, I would say. I've been obsessed with the form basically because I like having something to listen to for good reasons and bad. The good reasons are I like listening to people. I like the act of listening to people from different perspectives. The bad reason is I'm scared of the voices in my head. And so I listen to podcasts to cover them. I mean, literally, like if you knew the kind of crutch that podcasting is for me and like covering up silence, just walking from one end of the house to the other, I've got to play a podcast while I'm going, and I don't have a big house.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm like, I can listen to a solid 20 seconds while I'm doing this, that kind of thing. But trying to break out of that habit, but it is a habit. So I enjoy podcasts, and I like the act of conversation. I specifically, fell in love with interviews, and like having one-on-one conversations with people, sort of connecting on that deeper level. And that is really what defines my work. I would say I really, get energized by human connection, and specifically sort of one-on-one or just really tight-knit groups connecting with each other.
Right.
And so that's a lot of why I do what I do, I think.
And there's something to be said for the fact that you're extremely personable, having met you before, right? If you don't have that personality trait, I guess, I can't imagine being in your position. So it's interesting to me that you don't like to be alone in your head with your own thoughts because you do so well one-on-one. I mean, and I'm a hard person to kind of rein in, as I'm sure you figured that out by now.
I don't know what you're talking
about. And so for you to get me singularly focused on something was a challenge, I'm sure, but you did it very nicely. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, the personable thing is interesting because there's a lot of people that make great podcasts that I don't find to be the most personable in the world.
Sure.
It's just different approaches and different focuses in terms of what they think makes a good podcast. For me, it is like when it comes to podcasting, I associate it inherently with those personal relationships and connections. And so that's an important part of my work. It's also just important for client work, I think. When you have clients, you're going to have to be a good people person, or at least have a lot of understanding and empathy for what people are going through. There's like that thing where you're like, you're like, you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. It is 100% the most important thing, at least I think, in my work. And so that is, that's something I've done. The flip side of that, I'm going to be sharing a lot of like double-edged swords here in terms of my personality, I guess. But like the flip side of that is I'm a people pleaser, right? I've grown, and that's part of what the voices in my head are other people's voices, worrying about what other people think of me. That's the kind of thing that I think a lot of people in client work are like that, like they're good at people pleasing because they're very attuned to that sort of thing. Maybe they grew up. I'm not sure if this is my case, but some people grew up sort of like managing people and that sort of thing. But it's interesting. I've thought a lot about why am I good at this, and I've become very attuned to like those double-edged swords that cause me to be good at this particular thing.
Your podcast that you published last week about audience size was fascinating to me because I'm, of course, obsessed with audio size right now because I
yeah.
want to try to grow this into a money-making business, right?
Yeah.
So I want to turn it into a business and not just, hey, this is fun.
Yeah.
And it is fun, don't get me wrong, but I want it
Yeah.
to become a money-making business. So listening to your podcast last week, and I'm sorry I forgot the gentleman's name that was on, but he was so good.
I forgot too. I can't even like what who did I have
He was
on
Australian.
last week?
He was Australian.
That's right. Tommy. Tommy, I
Yes,
forgot
Tommy
his last
something.
name. Tommy P.
Yes.
I don't remember what its full last name
Well,
was.
Tommy,
Started
you
with
were
a P.
really good, but it was interesting because you were kind of getting into the psychology of why you're so obsessed. Well, not you, but why people are so obsessed with audience size. And
Yeah.
for me, I think it's because I always wanted to be on the radio as like I was grounded all the time as a teenager, so all I did was listen to the radio because it's all I could do. This was, long before computers and cell phones, guys. So I would just sit in my room and listen to music and become obsessed with the radio personalities, Jonathan Brandmeier, and I loved it. And I was like, oh, I want to be like radio famous, But then when I looked into it as a career, I was like, wow, that pays nothing. So
right. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, unless you're a huge personality.
Unless you're a celebrity, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It just didn't work out. So this is my new obsession because it's kind of the best of both worlds. I still get to do real estate, which I obviously love, or I wouldn't have done it for the last 12 years. And I love to do this. So it's fun. And I could not do it without your help. So thank you.
Yeah. And the number obsession thing is like, just comes with the territory. I mean, it's something I'm dealing with and addressing personally and with clients all the time. It's because it's very hard to find like a concrete measurement otherwise, whether this is something that is working or not. And if the numbers are going down, like that's not good. Everyone knows that inherently. But it is also like tricky, and I think you've heard probably enough podcast episodes to know that what I usually do, and you've interacted with me enough too to know that what I usually do when people bring up numbers and goals around download numbers is to say, let's back up, let's not think about that for a while, because it is going to take, it does often take a long time to reach the ideal sort of number goal that you want for the podcast that makes it feel quote unquote worth it. And so I always encourage people to think about what's the intrinsic value in doing this thing, and then also what else could we get out of this that would make it feel valuable. So for my podcast, Podcasting for Humans, I want people to like start seeing me. Seeing that I have a podcast sometimes is enough because I'm a podcast. I make podcasts, and if they're like, "Do you have one?" I'm like, not, if I say no, like that's weird. But also, like, I think just talking to people that are making podcasts every week and getting the opportunity to do that, and then getting, people getting to hear. I've found that the people that come to me to potentially be clients of mine after listening to the podcast, reading the newsletter, like inherently get it. It's just like an easy on-ramp to sort of what I'm doing and how I do it. And so I find that to be really valuable too.
Yeah. No, your help is immeasurable to somebody like me who just decided one day, hey, I want to do podcasting. So I went out and I bought all this equipment, and then I went, what the hell am I supposed to do with all this stuff? Right? I didn't know what to do. I mean, I had the money, I bought it, but now I'm like, and now what? So thankfully, the article I think you were in the featured in the Herald, the Daily Herald.
Yeah.
And that's how I found you.
Yeah.
So
that was nice. That was Jennifer. That was all Jennifer. She sent him a
really?
PR. She did a little PR work and said, "Hey,
good for her.
We're starting a Batavia centric, Batavia situated podcast company." And they're like, "Never heard of that before.
That's great.
Let's talk about it."
What is your advice for people who are either considering doing a podcast or, have jumped the gun like I did, bought all the equipment, we're super excited, and then we're like, and now what? Like, what's your advice?
That's great. I love that question. And the fun thing is like, that's probably happening more often than you'd think. The other day I saw like a picture on Twitter or something of like someone found at a drugstore, like a podcasting kit for like $10 or something crazy. Like they're just selling them. They're just encouraging people to podcast, which is honestly correct. Like that is 100% the best thing. In my opinion, I love people just trying stuff. I would say the number one piece of advice I would give is, I would say like, know who your audience is and do something for them that they haven't, that they're going to appreciate, right? And sort of know what your role among them is. So a lot of people, I think, they just want to do the hang out and talk thing. And I think that can be
Right.
like fine. It can be fine. But eventually I think especially if we're worried about growing in numbers, I think the advice is to find out who you're addressing this toward, and then find out what they need, what they want, and where you are uniquely situated to address those things.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be the primary. It's a little like abstract, but I think that would be it.
Well, no, it's not. I assumed your answer was going to be singularly focused, because that's what you tell me all the time. And I'm so bad at it. But
well, it's
but that
hard.
being
It's really
said-
hard. I'm bad at it too. I think everyone inherently is bad at it, which is why we have to remind ourselves all the time,
Right. But I don't want to create a podcast on one singular topic, just because I think it would just get boring. And the reason I like my podcast, not that duh. I hopefully everybody loves their own podcasts, but the reason I like it is because it's so dynamic in its subjects that we discuss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and I've loved the fact that people have actually written in and said, "Hey, can you talk about this?" Or can you, I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely
Yeah,
love it. So
And I agree with you. Like, I think talking about a variety of subjects, it works for this podcast. I think the thing that all of those have in common is your approach to them and like the way you talk about them. And I think for so many podcasters, the challenge is not so much finding what's unique or like that sort of thing as much as it is framing, putting that to the top. How do I help other people understand fundamentally
Right.
what that is, and it is really hard. And I've struggled even for podcasting for humans, like, for my podcast, I struggle to communicate what is special about this thing. I sort of inherently know, I have like a muscle memory of what is special about it, but I struggle to articulate it sometimes because it's just like way back in the head, in the back of my head.
Okay.
And I think sometimes like you're in marketing too, this, like sometimes marketing is just getting stuff out of your head and saying it in a way people can fundamentally grab on and understand.
right.
That's a big thing for podcasting too, I think.
So what's your advice like for advertising? Because for those who don't know, I come from a strong marketing and corporate event planning background. So I did that for almost 20 years before I became a realtor. So if I don't know how to market myself, I'm in big trouble. So I know how to, like that I can do, but where do you think the best advertising dollars are spent these days for podcasts?
So you're saying if I have a podcast and I want to advertise it, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Just which platform would you use?
so. Social media is fine. It's an easy way to get the word out. I would say it's not the
It's
ideal
easy
way.
and free.
It's easy
Yeah.
and free. Yeah. Now, and free becomes a no-brainer, right? Sure, do it. But in terms of paid advertising, I find it to be really ineffective. People are not in a space where they want to listen to a podcast when they're doing social media. So that would be my first thing. And then I would say other podcasts is by far probably the best place to advertise your podcast, because people are obviously in a space to listen to podcasts, and they're usually looking for other podcasts. Like people who listen to podcasts start to branch out, and are looking for, they're sampling other things. And especially if you
Right.
can get, I think also like promo swaps are a big deal and something that really help people. If you can find the right podcasts to do promo swaps with, like with all of these things, you want to match audiences, which is another reason it's important
Sure.
to know who your audience is. But you want to go, okay, they are also like aiming their thing towards an audience like mine. There's not total overlap. We're not competing, but we offer something that they might like. I would say that's probably the best move. Newsletters are good too. Like buying ads in newsletters can be valuable because people, it's just like a similar mindset to some degree in terms of investing in a creator. The thing about social media is people are sort of in a tourist mindset where they're just like moving on. They're just trying to entertain themselves for a few minutes and move on with
Oh,
their
sure.
life.
I'm asking specifically on behalf of Life with a Sherry on Top. I'm thinking of advertising on Spotify because
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of listeners go to listen to their podcasts, right?
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
But I don't know if I want to spend that kind of money. It's expensive. It's really
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
It's so much easier with real estate. Honestly, I will tell you, a lot of my clients actually come from restaurants and bars because
Interesting.
my husband and I spend so much time at restaurants and bars, and so we
Just
we
like
just strike up
networking and meeting people.
conversations.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. Honestly, it's how I got countless clients, and then
Yeah.
they obviously most of my business now is referral, but I'll use Aliano's in East Dundee just a couple days ago. My husband and I were there, and a couple was talking about housing, and I butted in on the conversation and said, are you working with a realtor? And they said, well, yeah, but we're not happy with him, and he's an uncle or something. And and I'm always very careful about, I never want to step on any other realtor's toes, right? Because I wouldn't want anybody to do that to me.
Yeah.
So I always say, if you're unhappy, then you need to talk to them and explain why you're unhappy and try to fix it. And if that doesn't work, come to me.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So both of them were like, okay, we're going to be calling you. I said, okay, great. And that's just how, that's just how it works. And
Yep.
I don't know how to work podcasting into a conversation.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's also like,
hey,
it's a
I happen
different,
to be a podcaster.
you're also looking for a mass audience as opposed to like one person is a big deal in real estate, or any
Yes.
client work really.
Yeah.
One person is a big deal. When it comes to podcasting, 10 people feels like chumps change, right? It's
Right.
like, I only have 10 listeners. That's not good.
Right.
That can feel bad. But if you had 10 clients in a month, you'd be pumped. You'd be excited.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like that
Absolutely.
is the challenge where you're trying to get multiple people like pretty invested. They're not paying money, but they're giving you a lot of time. And that can be a hard
Right.
sell for people. And so I do think like that's why it's so important to go where they're already doing what you're asking them to do and where they're definitely the type of people that would sort of get it. Spotify,
Okay.
I haven't looked
Good
into
advice.
like Spotify ads specifically, but I know that Spotify runs some like ad marketplaces. I would say like looking into podcast ad marketplaces could be really valuable, but like you said, it's probably going to be expensive across the board. The best case scenario is to find people you have connections with or know or are starting out or have smaller audiences and just offer them something that, look at CPMs, like standard CPMs is between like $18 and $25, depending on the kind of ad,
Right.
per 1,000 listeners.
Yes.
And you find those places and you sort of offer the bare minimum that you can afford and see if they take you up on it. Honestly is like the best.
Yeah.
Even like
I've already done
experiments and
that.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
done that. I mean, I've done a bunch of things, but I don't have 10,000 listeners yet, and I want
Right.
10,000 listeners tomorrow. But
Yep.
I mean, I am
Me
really
too.
thrilled with how things are going, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I have nothing to complain about. At least I don't think I do. You'd know better than I do. But I thought hitting 500 listeners in, 5 weeks was
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then now I've got 5 or 6 different countries listening, so I'm super excited about that too.
Yeah.
You know?
That's awesome.
My husband and I were talking about bringing the equipment down because every year we go away to a beach somewhere for New Year's Eve. And he was like, oh, it would be really fun to do like a live podcast during that time. And I was like, it would be really fun. And I think people would really enjoy that. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to carry all this equipment down and, and then have to worry about the lighting and the blood. I just, no, I don't. So we're not going to do it. But yeah, okay. Well, I thought maybe you had some other insights to advertising that I didn't, but it looks like we're on the same page there.
Yeah, my big insight is like advertise on other podcasts. That's kind of the biggest one because I think mediums, it's hard to get people to go from one medium to the other. Maybe they don't even know what podcasts are. That's still a significant percentage of people
still a thing
out there. Yep,
I
still
know.
A thing. It's changing fast, but it's still a thing. So,
well, and my audience, my target audience is older than most. So, people are like, "Oh, great, you have a podcast. What does that mean?"
Yeah. How do I
podcast is something you listen to. Yeah. Exactly.
It's that whole conversation of what is it and how do I get it can get really old, but can also like be a really good opportunity because like now you're creating guests out of thin air, and if they're not listening to any other podcasts, then they're definitely listening to yours on a regular basis. You know what I mean? It can be really valuable in that way. So that could be an opportunity too.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh,
all right, well, thanks
actually
for joining me today.
I'm sorry. I interrupted.
No, go ahead.
That reminds me of like a really good advertising opportunity too. Like I'm actually a pretty big believer in local and sort of
yes, me too.
What's the word?
You need to
in marketing? You would know this better than me.
You need to grow it organically.
Yeah. What's the word for like out of home? Is it OOH or something? Is that the term? Anyway, there's a term for like billboards and
like
stuff.
Like an anagram? Yeah. I don't know. I'm too old for that. I barely know what, WTF means. So,
right. So I think that can be really valuable. And just also the one that takes the tact of like, this is like what a podcast is and how to listen to it, I think can be really valuable for a certain kind of audience as well.
Yeah. Yes, it can be. But then they go, what do you mean what's an apple? Like, never mind. If you don't,
QR codes.
If you're not familiar with Apple by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're not going to know how to use those either. They're not.
Just take a picture.
Listen.
It's just,
yeah, I know. But people then don't understand that they have to wait for the thing to actually scan.
Finicky.
Yeah. So they're just taking a picture of something and going, I don't know what this does. Okay. So thank you for joining me today, Richard. I do appreciate it. If you
it was fun.
If you're thinking of doing a podcast, Richard is definitely a person you need to talk to. And I think doesn't your website offer like a 30-minute consultation?
Yes. Anyone who wants to talk to me for 30 minutes can do so for absolutely free. Just schedule it on the website and you can pick my brain for 30 minutes.
He really is good. And I couldn't do this without you. So thank you very much again.
Thank you so much.
I try to cross promote you as much as I can. You're on my website. This is my first video doing a podcast via video. So I was like, Richard, I need somebody I'm comfortable with. So it's going to be you. He's like, okay. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. You're always a good sounding board for me.
Absolutely.
You can reach out to him at areacodeaudio.com. And if you want to reach out to me about this or any other show, you can do so as always by reaching out to me at lifewithasherryontop at gmail.com. That's my email. Or you can go to the website lifewithasherryontop.com. And again, Cheri is spelled Cheri. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.